Okay, so welcome to the final section of our test-driven development course. In this section, nothing too technical now, we're just going to be talking about how best to apply TDD. We're also going to consider when test-driven development may not be appropriate, how TDD fits in with other development practices, and also where to go from here, how to go about improving our TDD abilities. So, firstly, I want to start by talking about when not to use TDD. Now, that might seem a little odd on a course on test-driven development to talk about not using it, especially after seeing the benefits it can provide in terms of code quality, design quality, etc. But it's worth bearing in mind that TDD is not always the right approach. So, one example might be temporary throwaway projects, experimental projects. You may not need the same level of quality you would get with an application you are definitely going to be putting into production, for instance. If you know the code is only going to be short-lived, then there's not really a lot of benefit into creating these tests. There's no point in spending a lot of effort, a lot of time creating these tests if they're not going to serve a benefit and serve as regression tests in the future, in which case test-driven development probably isn't the quickest way to get to the end result. Also, we've talked about test-driven development's impact on design, how it allows us to do incremental design. Now, in some organisations that may not be appropriate. You may be working in a situation where you actually have to produce large amounts of design up front, or the design may already be fixed, so if you already know what the design looks like, it may be that you choose to still write tests, but not write them in a test-driven fashion. I think the key for me is remembering that test-driven development is one aspect of software development, one aspect of software quality. There are other practices like continuous delivery, integration testing, behaviour-driven development, all sorts of other aspects of software development and that quality spectrum that you need to consider too. So, as with any technique you could use, it's always worth bearing in mind the context, your specific context, and weighing up the pros and cons and working out whether the cost of delivering in test-driven development is worth the benefit that it gives you. And for a great many organisations, for a great many projects, it will be. So where do we go from here then? How do we now start introducing test-driven development into our projects, into our organisations? I think the key for me is practice. So before attempting to start using test-driven development on a real-world project in the day job, I would certainly look at going through a number of exercises using test-driven development to write some code, write some simple applications. And this is going to really help you get a feel for what that rhythm looks like, what that rhythm should feel like. And initially you may run into a number of problems or obstacles when you try and develop in this way, but then gradually you'll work out how to write code that's more testable, that's going to be easier to develop in a test-driven fashion. Because I think for some people, even thinking about writing tests for their code, let alone writing in a test-driven fashion, can often present a massive shift in mindset from the way they were used to thinking about problems before. And that's why I think exercises are a really good way to get up to speed and become proficient in TDD really quickly.